Hi there. Well, as everyone knows, the Belper Arts Trail should have been taking place on the bank holiday weekend, August 2020, and unfortunately it's been cancelled due to the coronavirus outbreak, like so many other things. We are all very disappointed not to be there. It's a great event and we all look forward to it every year. So instead we're having the virtual Belper Arts Trail. So I'm going to do a demonstration for you in just a little while. Typical of the type of thing that I would do on my stand at the show. All the products that are featured in the demonstration and far more are available on my website. I do hope you enjoy it and visit to have a look at some of those products. Also on the Belper Arts Trail website there are quite a few of my paintings for sale, all at reduced prices this year. We're all keen to get a little bit of money in. So please do have a browse at those, and if there's anything you fancy, well, buy it, basically. I hope to see you all next year, and for the time being, please do all stay safe. Right then, well, I'm going to do a classic watercolour line and wash study today. This is actually a brilliant way to start if you're not quite sure what you're doing with watercolours. What it entails is just getting a basic picture like the one you can see here. This is a farmhouse that I passed by when it was raining a couple of weeks ago up at Stannington in Sheffield, near where I live. And it's not a very bright picture, it's a bit mundane, but I like the shape of the farmhouse and the idea that the road was running alongside it. So I'm basically using this photograph and I'm going to create something which is much brighter and much more artistic than we can see in the photograph. So I'll just move that to one side. As you can see here, I've done a pencil sketch based on the buildings, and I've sort of put some shrubs and bushes and things around. And I've not made this road look quite as sort of straight as it was. I want to make it look more like a farm track. I've also put a telephone pole here with some wires on it, and I'm going to twist and bend everything a little bit. So the idea is to use, I'm using a Unipin pen here, that's this one. This is a Unipin 0.6, as you can see. This is absolutely 100% waterproof. What that means is that when I put the water and the paint on afterwards, this ink is not going to run. Please do check your pens before you start doing this. It's a real shame if you do a full drawing with a pen and then you put your water on and it all runs and goes grey. So what I'm going to do is, I won't bore you with you watching me all the way through this. I'll just do a little bit and then we'll move the video on. The idea is to get the ink on and get all the definition that you want with the pen. And then we're going to erase all of the pencil. So I'll start maybe with this sort of building over here. And I like to do quite sort of scratchy lines rather than just single straight A to B lines. I'm just going to do this window here for you so you can see how I'm going to tackle that. So if I just do that basic frame and then I can just scribble in some dark ink into what would be the window pane, and all of a sudden that looks like a window. You don't have to go mad, you don't have to fill everything in nice and neat. I quite like leaving a little bit to the imagination. The ridge for the farm building there, I want these to have little dips and bends in them because it just makes it look a little bit more rustic and a little bit more characterful. And you know, people often say to me, how do I do brickwork? Well, brickwork, the bricks are so tiny on this building here now that we can't really see them individually. Well, you might be able to see them with the naked eye, but to draw them with a pen like this with the naked eye would be an absolute nightmare. I've just noticed a window there. I'm just going to put one in just to make that wall look a little bit more interesting. So brickwork, well, what I do generally with something like this is, I'll just show you on this front wall here, is I'll just do a little bit of stonework here and there like that. So you just do a little bit of it and you don't actually have to draw individual stones. You can almost just let your pen rove around a bit, doing some horizontals and verticals like this, So you just have a suggestion of stonework here and there, like that. And this makes a really good way of doing it in line and wash. So instead of having to spend hours doing all these individual stones, you represent them with these sort of squarish geometric shapes and leave spaces in between them. So I'm going to crack on with that now, and hopefully before long we'll have a nice ink drawing that we can put some paint on. Okay, so there you go. That's the ink applied, and you can see I've done that really quickly in a very sketchy, quite stylized way. I know it looks, you know, I've moved the pen around with confidence, but the more you do of this, the more quickly you tend to do it, the more confident you become. It really is a matter of practice. So now that the ink is on and I've erased all of the original pencil guidelines that were underneath, we're ready to put some paint on. Okay, so I'm just going to use 4 brushes for putting the paint on. This is my mini hake, or Harke, however you want to pronounce it. This is produced to me by ProArty, available on the website. I think they're £8.95. Fantastic brush, made with goat hair, about 3/4 of an inch wide. Brilliant for putting flat washes on really quickly. I've also got a foliator brush, which has been out for some time. This is a brush I designed for just putting trees on. You'll see in a minute what I'm going to use that for. There's 3 sizes in this altogether. I'm using a large one here. And I've got 2 of my spearhead brushes. I've got a number 6 and a number 10. Again, another brush specially developed for me by ProArty. This has got a new type of synthetic hair in it. It's much softer. It's much more like sable. A little bit longer and a little bit sharper than a traditional round brush. So those are the 4 I'm going to use, and I'm going to use various different colours in here. I'm going to make it a sunny day, and I'm going to make this much brighter and much more fun than the sort of rather mundane photograph we looked at. So I'm going to start with cerulean blue. I've just got the mini hake here. I'm just going to fill that up with water, and I'm just going to basically try and create a sky. I'm just putting the water sort of around the building, 2 or 3 brush loads just to get that nice and wet. I'm going to do this as a vignette. I'm not going to paint right up to the edge. And once you start painting like this, depending on what style you're hoping to achieve really, but it is quite possible to continue painting the other bits of the picture without drying first, and then you'll get like a bleed or a leak through from one colour to the other. So I've just put a little bit of cerulean blue into my hake, and I'm just going to sort of delicately feather that across. Not going right up to the edge of the paper, as you can see, leaving a few spaces which will hopefully help it to look like there's a bit of cloud around. Let's just pop a little bit more at the top there, just a little bit more strength up there. And then what I'm going to do is, this might sound weird, but I'm now going to paint some background trees here, and I'm going to use the foliator brush for that. I've pre-mixed some green paint. This is a mixture of lemon yellow and ultramarine, and I'm just going to stab it downwards with the foliator like this. And as you can see, that because the paper is wet, already, the paint sort of fuses and fizzes into the already wet area. So I'll just put a little bit. This is just to represent some background trees. These will fade into the sky, and they will not disappear completely, but it will just leave us with a little hint of some background over there. I think that'll do. I think that's enough there. I'm going to get straight on now while that's drying, and I'm going to put some colour in for the road. So I'm just going to switch to my number 10 spearhead brush. I'm going to pick up a little bit of burnt umber, just a very small amount, and I haven't pre-wet this area. I'm just going to run some burnt umber all the way through here, just flicking the brush from side to side. So a little bit more water, and we'll pull that all the way through into the foreground down here, varying the intensity of the paint a little bit. There we are. And as I reach this foreground area, I'm just going to fade that away, so again, to try and keep that vignette feature. I'm now going to just pop a little bit, this is a little bit of a mix of ultramarine and light red. I'll feather a little bit of that in as well. It's all done so very quickly and sketchily like that. So that's the road painted. Let's make a start on the buildings now. So I'm going to use, again, burnt umber for this. I would like the sun to be shining. So I'm going to have these gable ends in sunshine. This one will have a shadow across it, and then the sides of the buildings will be darker, just so that I can try and keep a sense of light. So this is the burnt umber I was talking about earlier. And I'm just feathering that in, and I'm leaving some, that's a little bit of light red I've just put in there. So this is just a little mixture of various colours. You can keep adding water. If you variegate the colours in this way and try and leave a few little white spaces as well, that creates highlights for the building. Let's go up to the next one now. Again, I'll just start with that burnt umber. I haven't bothered drying the blue for the sky. I'm quite happy for some of these colours just to sort of merge together. There's a little bit of very pale burnt umber. I'll return to that, flick in a little bit of slightly stronger burnt umber, tiny bit of this light red as well. And it sort of goes a purpley colour. It's all rather nice. And the same on this face here. Little bit dry that. Just keep adding water. Make sure you've got plenty of water, so the whole thing is nice and fluid. And then we've got this bit of a wall here as well. A little bit of the stronger burnt umber. Now I can see here that this burnt umber has run a bit and left a watermark, which actually looks rather nice. So I'm going to just leave that as it is. Feather in another little touch of that light red here and there. Good. So this face and this face will be much darker, but I'm going to wait for that to dry before I put that in. And I'm going to do the roofs red. I want it to look like the sort of red slate roof, making it much brighter. So while that paint's on and while that's drying, let's return to the green. If I can find the palette with the green on. And I'm going to feather in some of this green paint now. So chop it in, but what's really important is that I create some depth to this green. So I've got a stronger mix of the green, and I drop that in, and that gives it what I would call a variegation and a contrast. Quickly wash the brush out and move on to this bit here. And that just catches a little bit of that darker paint, and the whole thing sort of bleeds and fuses together. So go into the darker stuff, and I'll just create an edge now to that road there with some darker paint. Same in the background. Let's just pop these in here. I'll come back to that fence shortly. But what's interesting about this, as you can see, is that because I've put all the definition on first with the pen, the drawing is already done. I'm not actually having to create any definition or any lines with the paint. So it means you can be much more flippant, if you like, with the paint. And that creates a certain style then. You can see how, look, how just dropping that dark paint in there just creates some little shadows in the shrubs. And it makes it look more three-dimensional. Just this little bit down the side here to finish off. And what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to put a little bit of green in there. I'm going to try and be clever here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get some clear water and just put that all the way across this corner. And I'm going to try and fade that paint away into clear water. Just put a little bit of that darker stuff in there as well. I mean, that's fairly nondescript down there. It just fades the picture to nothing. And I'm going to do the same on this side. I'll just put a little bit of this green on here. A little bit of the darker stuff, especially towards the bottom. And then again, I'll just use some clear water here. And we'll just give that a scrub and just try and fade the edge of that bush away. So this clear water that I've put in here starts to blend and fuse with the paint that I've put on. Some of it might creep back and leave a watermark, so you just have to watch for that. But to be honest, if you get a little watermark here and there, it can add to the texture of the whole thing. So I've put this greenery in now for the trees around here and the shrubs. If you have a look now at what I put in right at the beginning, that's really nicely faded now and gone all fuzzy around the edge. So it's just a little hint of some trees in the background. And this is a really useful way of using green because it's a really awkward colour to use. Right, so I'm going to go to my number 6 brush now, and I'm going to go and get some of this stronger colour. So this is back to my mix of ultramarine and light red. It's this kind of purpley colour, sort of plum colour, and I'm going to paint that on the insides of these gable ends here. And that makes it look very three-dimensional. I've actually realised I've just missed a bit there. And I'll just put a little bit in here as well. I'm going to darken that a little bit, just to add to the effect. And there will be a shadow across here, because if the sun's on these gable ends here, there'll be a shadow across there. So I'm going to use the same colour and I'm going to put a shadow across from there across the building like that. There we are. Right, I better just fill that other little bit in that I missed just here. There we go. So let's just missed those chimneys as well. Let's put a bit of paint on those chimneys. And I'm going to use burnt sienna for the roofs. And you'll see straight away that this is a beautiful colour that just blends so well with the colours that's already on. I'm going to use that for the roofs here to make them look like red roofs. And again, I've left a little bit of a gap here and there. It just adds a little bit of sparkle to the picture. There we go. And the chimneys are also darker on one side because of the sun. In fact, that's down the edge of that wall there. We'll put a bit down there, a bit down there, a bit down there. We'll put a little bit of paint on these chimney pots. And we're almost done, I would say. So you can have an awful lot of fun with a picture like this. That's taken me just a few minutes. You've seen me paint the whole thing very quickly. And just look how that's developed. It really is quite extraordinary how a very simple photograph like this can be converted into a really bright and breezy and really stylized and artistic piece of work. Right, just one last thing before we go. I've dried that off, and I want to put a mount on this, which always makes a world of difference. This is an 1814 frame size with a 12x8 aperture, and I can pop that on there and I can move it around to find the best composition, best balance, and that probably looks about right there. So that's it from me, and as I said, I certainly hope to be back with you next year in Belper in May, and for the time being, it's goodbye.